Right? In other words, they get something, you get something as a coach, only if they actually achieve a certain lasting package of results. When we talk about holding someone for ransom, ransom implies that someone else has to pay, right? In order for that person to be freed. So you can have three-way level coaching. In other words, there's a coach, there's a client, there's also an external body who's going to monitor the effect of the coaching, or going to monitor the result, and only if that third objective body is happy will the money be released to the actual coach itself. You see what I'm trying to say? I'm just using this as an example to spark off different possibilities.
Can I just give you an example of David Bowie, the songwriter? He used to take words and write them down and put them in a box, and then just take the words out of the box, and that's how he would write some of his songs. He would string them all together. So it sounds like a bunch of non sequiturs, but he was actually able to create his songs by doing that.
Yeah, that's a good point. The idea is simply that we want to bring something alien to our natural way of thinking to jump us out of the track of our natural thinking. This is what we're trying to say. In natural thinking, the biggest problem is that we tend to see things or think in a certain way. As we said before, we're habituated into a certain way of thinking. Unless something comes to stimulate us, we don't jump outside of that way of thinking. In fact, that's how many people come to Krishna consciousness. They were thinking, like everyone else is, the material life is going to make me really happy. But then something happened that jumped them out of the normal way of thinking and forced them to look at things from a different angle or to consider different possibilities. Many of you may know, sometimes someone comes to Krishna consciousness because they were just living a normal materialistic life, but their aunt died or their grand died, and that's what jumped them out of the normal way of thinking. They started to think, well, what happens to her after death? Where did she go? What happens to the soul? Where did she come from? So there was a certain event that blocked off their normal way of living or normal way of thinking and took them into a different track. Right? So in one sense, we're reproducing the same thing, but more on the mental platform. We want to do something which will stop us or take us outside the normal way of thinking so we can look at other possibilities. And that doesn't mean that you don't use your logic and reason and think normally. This is in addition to your normal processes of thinking. Right? It's a way of generating more ideas so you have more to choose from in terms of how you particularly solve different problems, address different challenges, work through different scenarios. The old paradigm is that if I win, you lose. Right? Or if you win, then I lose. Or we both lose. Right? If I can't have something, you can't have it either. These are ways of the old paradigm. But the spiritual paradigm and what's becoming more the new paradigm is win-win. You may have a situation where you're in a particular yatra and for some reason some authorities are giving you a hard time. Right? They're blocking you or they're making it difficult for you to do certain things, etc. and you're getting frustrated. Right? And the normal way of thinking is that in order for me to win, I have to defeat this authority. Right? That's the normal way of thinking. Or they defeat me. Or if I can't win, then I'm also going to sabotage what they're doing so none of us get any benefit. But then also there's a possibility that if we really examine the situation and we actually put our minds to it, we may be able to generate a win-win situation. What are their needs, interests and concerns? What are their insecurities? What is causing them to act in this particular way? How can I do what I need to do while at the same time not getting any unnecessary attack or disturbance or blocks from that particular authority? That requires thinking outside the box. That requires the belief that it doesn't have to be about me getting one over them or them getting one over me. There's other possibilities which are conceivable. Right? Even if I can't see it at this particular time, there's other ways of doing things, other ways of solving this problem. With these techniques, we're giving you an abstract, but as with any technique, if you practice it, I'm not saying this, from some kind of theory. I read this book. It's called Poe, Beyond Yes and No. This is a book I read by Bhuta Bhavana Prabhu many years ago. I was maybe over 15 years ago. And I actually experimented with these systems, and they work. They're very practical. If you read his books, he's worked with groups like Exxon, mobile. I mean, as I said before, the Fortune 100. This person has his own island, right? And it's all of one simple, this very simple, basic idea of just helping people to find a way to jump outside the normal way that they think, right? That's all it is, in essence, just that simple thing. He's written so many books, and really, as I said before, we could have done that, right? But we don't conceive these ideas, or if we do, we conceive the idea but we don't do anything on it. So what I'm saying is, there are millions of possibilities out there. Like, we get this example of the Dharma Index. It's a brilliant idea, right? It's a brilliant idea. Anyone could have done that for, any time, right? Potentially. Because the Muslim tradition, they already did it. They already have an index on the Dow Jones where there is a bunch where they track certain goods which don't go against or contravene Islamic principles. They did it in 1999, right? And it's now 2008. So it's not like, it's not even in one sense completely new, but we could have done this before. And there are countless ideas like that which are floating around. Even if you're conceptualizing for stories for a film, right? There are so many classic kinds of stories or ideas, but if you utilize these techniques, you can come up with something completely original, right? We have two things going for us. One is the sincere desire, and two is the super soul which is fulfilling that desire. These techniques and tools are means by which we're showing the super soul, I'm very serious about finding solutions to these problems, right? And solutions to these problems which are going to help to spread this Krishna consciousness movement, help me in my spiritual life, and make it very exciting and inspirational, not just for myself but for others. Every time you come up with a new idea, a new way of doing things, you will excite people. You will open up people's minds to the greater possibilities that Krishna consciousness has to offer. So in one sense, it necessitates us to think outside the box more. Not just to settle for the normal way we do things, the normal way we think, but understand that even though I'm thinking like this, actually there is this, all these other possibilities exist if I can just tap into them. And you will be given these ideas, these solutions, these concepts, these means by which we can really spread Krishna consciousness. I had lunch today with Chaitanya Nitai. And so we were speaking, and he was telling me some amazing things. He was talking about some of the people he's connected with, people who know people like Nelson Mandela. There's a whole thing about social corporate responsibility, and some writers are suggesting that actually companies should be judged not on their maximization of profits, but their social impact. Right? As you can start to do projects around the whole idea that the companies which have a greater social impact, they have their own kind of indices, you can invest in those companies. Right? Now think about it. If we came up with that idea and we managed those companies, or we were kind of organizing those kind of indices, that whichever the Fortune 100 socially responsible companies, right? And people invest in those companies which are socially responsible, and we're managing those investments, and we're taking a certain percentage of those investments, and that's going to the movement. What do you think would happen to this movement? You see what I'm trying to say? And there's loads of ideas like that. There's people coming up with these things all the time, right? All the time. There was another idea you told me about, whereby online you can actually give a donation. What they do is, in developing countries, there's one kind of entrepreneur who came up with this idea. You can give, let's say you gave $25, right? You can donate to a developing country where people will use that money for business, to start some small business. After 6 months to a year, they've used the money, they've made some profit, they give you the money back, right? And because you got the money back, you can then donate it again to some other business, etc., etc. Right? If we set up our own cottage industries in developing countries, had all of our projects there, and we were in charge of that particular initiative, you'd have the world donating to Krishna conscious projects. Again, they'd give the money, it'd be invested in spiritual projects. They benefit spiritually and materially. You give the money back to them afterwards. How much would that generate for our movement? Right? And when you think about it in hindsight, it's a very simple idea, isn't it? Very simple, makes sense, not hard to do. Right? It just requires someone to think of the idea. You don't even have to be the person who implements it. A Brahmana teaches, he may not implement, that's fine. But if you have the concept that it can make a difference, then you give it to other people to roll with it who make it happen. Right? Does that make sense? Another idea he told me about is where you give something to charity, and you also try and get other people to give, and every person who gives to that same charity that you spoke of, you get a percentage of the money they've given. So it's almost like a pyramid selling system, right? And that way, large amounts of money go to charity, and you also get something out of it because people are selfish, right? Again, if people are doing that for Food for Life, or for any kind of devotional projects, again, a very simple way to make it happen. Right? We didn't think of these ideas. Someone else thought of these ideas. Someone else is managing these ideas. Someone else is making a big difference in people's lives due to these ideas, and they're simple, basic ideas. This world is run by ideas. Believe me, right? It's run by ideas. People have some ideas. Someone else, they may not even implement it themselves. They may just run it with someone else, right? But it's run by ideas. And these ideas will change the world as they are implemented. So we should be thinking, even if you don't use these techniques, my thing is I really push you, think long and hard about how to spread this movement in a big and lasting way. You have your service, that's fine, but also you think of these ideas and you can share them with people who may implement them, or you may implement them yourself. But know that there's so much more possible than we're doing now. This is not what's happening in our movement now is not the summit of Krishna consciousness by any means at all. Right? There's so much more to be done, so much more is possible. We just have to kind of get into that meditation of thinking how we're going to do it. I know the Bhakti Charamaj, he writes to Prabhupada, like an offering to Prabhupada, I think on a daily basis. And so he sent one out recently, and someone forwarded it to me. And he was speaking to Prabhupada about how in Kali Yuga, especially at this time, the Vaishyas are running the world. Right? Finance, money. They have all the power and they're running the world. He told us one time, well, he told me, I was traveling with him, we were at the airport on our way back from Switzerland, and he said to me that in Kali Yuga there's no room for Kshatriyas. Right? He said that to me, he said, because a Kshatriya is independent. He said a Kshatriya establishes his own position by his own prowess. He said, but in Kali Yuga, if ever a Kshatriya tries to do that, you just get some low-class Shudra who will stab him in the back. That's what Marge told me, He says, therefore, what the whole thing is, because the Vaishyas are running the world, we have to kind of infiltrate the Vaishya community in some way, shape or form, and then from there, also some Kshatriyas will come, some qualified Kshatriyas. Right? He said we have to make the Vaishyas Vaishnavas. Now that may or may not be something that you're involved in, but I'm just giving you this idea because it's a different way of thinking about things. Krishna Prabhupada, his vision of Krishna consciousness was not that you have a few temples. Before I came to America, Kripamoy was telling me that statistically 96% of our members in the ISKCON live outside of the temple. 96%. Right? So when you're talking about ISKCON, you're talking about more than some temples. 96%. Right? That means the vast majority of the members of our movement live outside of the temple. Something has to be done to facilitate them, and they have to also be very instrumental in making this movement spread. Right? Obviously working in cooperation with the centers as well. It's just some statistics for you to think about. But it's very exciting if we use what we have. Through the scriptures you will also get inspiration. Prabhupada, he was criticized so much, right? If you think that when you're trying new things that some people have an issue, get used to it, right? Because it's going to happen. Radha Swami said in a class, or more than one class, when he last came to England, he said, if you haven't been offended in ISKCON yet, don't worry, it's just around the corner. I can give you that lecture, he said that. If you haven't been offended in ISKCON yet, it's just around the corner. Right? So, people are going to criticize, not criticize. Innovation scares some people. There are some people, for them, if it just stays within very clear black and white paradigms, they're safe, and that's fine. Right? But is that where you're at? Is that the best that you can do? Because when you pass away, you'll have to explain yourself to Prabhupada. Right? This is the best I could do. Prabhupada, really? Really? This is the best you could do? Yeah. I don't think you'd be too impressed, at least by me. You know? So we have to think outside the box and try and give the greatest offering that we can. And that will actually make us happy. The biggest preaching is if you're happy. Don't let people fool you. Doesn't matter how much you have, your position. If they look at you and they can see someone who's happy, who's excited, who's pleased, who's fulfilled, that's preaching, because they don't care about the other things. People in Kali Yuga don't care about God. Just don't think preaching to them a Christian is very attractive is going to make a difference. They think they're God, right? What they care about is being happy, being successful, this and that, right? Everyone is into the effect. They don't want to know about the cause. They want the effect, and simply because the effect is good, they'll trace it back and take notice of the cause. That's how it works. That's why in Kali Yuga, most of the progressive preaching is looking at showing people the effect, and then so this is the effect. Where did it come from? Oh, it came from this Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, right? Chanting Hare Krishna. That's how they're going. So we have to also understand where people are coming from and then adjust ourselves accordingly. Right? There's no reason why we can't have our centers, packed. I mean, packed. People. There's no reason why we can't have people lining up to come to our centers. There's, I think it's Ravi Shankar Art of Living course. Someone was telling me that he was doing some program and people were lining. They hired some big auditorium. And people were lining up. There was a line all the way down the road, right? Like into the distance, right? When we have programs, do you see people lining up like that? No. Why not? No. Do we? We don't really think it's possible. Well, I think Christian consciousness is good, but I don't think other people are going to be into it, right? That's because you don't actually know what it is, and we're not fully aligned with how to spread it yet, but there will be tremendous advancement that comes by sharing it. So what we're trying to encourage you to use these techniques, practice them. I mean, I was going to do a practice, but time is actually a bit short. What I'm going to suggest is this. I'd like you to actually do a little exercise, like a homework exercise. 2 points before I go into the exercise. These techniques are something that are to be learned and imbibed. So don't think that because you used it for the first time and you couldn't come up with a new idea, therefore it's a load of rubbish. Right? Like anything else, you have to practice it. It still requires some effort. You have to put in some kind of effort, some work, in order to make it happen. But if you keep utilizing, you'll become so used to it that you can jump outside of the box anytime you want to. You can think outside the box at will. And you can use this professionally to come up with new solutions to any problems you have at work, in the workplace. Edward de Bono, he's hired by all the biggest companies. He comes into their organization, he trains their staff in innovation thinking. They use this stuff all the time, right? If you want, I can send you various examples of different companies who use these techniques, how they used it, what the results were, right? I mean, this person has his own island. That's how much they're paying him or respecting him based upon these techniques, which are simple techniques. We should be able to think of something like this. It's simple. Right? One of you should be able to think of something like this. You come up with a technique, you may be inspired by the Vedas or some other way. Some technique that can be utilized in business. They'll hire you, you go there, you train their staff, they understand the principles, they understand where you're coming from, they utilize that in Krishna's service. You utilize the money, the respect, the influence, the networks in Krishna's service. Right? Again, it's not difficult. Right? Our worst problem is that we think that these things are out of reach. Why? What's so difficult about this idea? Now you're listening to the idea. Be honest, you could have followed that, right? You just kind of bring something in which is outside of your normal way of thinking to jump you out of your normal track to see things from a different angle. Easy, in hindsight. But he did it. And he came up with the idea. He wrote the book. And he's the one who's getting hired. He's the one who's being influential. We could have done that. So many things are like that. Okay? But the homework I'm going to ask you is to use this technique, use both of these techniques, the intermediate impossible, whereby you write down a particular area of concern or particular challenge, then you write next to it a statement which is, as I said, intermediate impossible, which doesn't make sense, right? It's not a normal solution, it's not a logical solution to the problem that you have in mind, but you try and bring the two things together to stimulate new ways of seeing things. That's one thing. Choose a second concern. It doesn't have to be a problem necessarily, but maybe something that you want to improve, some area of your life or some kind of aspect of the mission that you want to improve. And then do the second exercise, which is a random juxtaposition. You write down the area of concern, and then next to it, you get a dictionary. You open it up. The first word that you see on the first word at the beginning of that particular page that you're on, put that down next to the area of concern and see how that sparks off new ways of thinking about that area of concern, new ideas. Okay? And if you practice that again, it'll become instinctual, it'll become a normal habit. And through that, you will develop this habit of lateral thinking. Constantly thinking outside the box, looking at new ways of doing things. If I had more time on my stay in America, I'll do an actual follow-up session where we'd actually work on these things and actually deal with some problems or some challenges, or work on areas that we want you to improve on. For those who are in the ashram or 26th Avenue, or who have time, before I go, because I fly out on Sunday, if there is time, or if you want to get together on a one-to-one or as a group, we can go through some of these things. Because I don't really feel I've done it enough justice to, go into more the application aspect. But I want you to try that exercise, and also, if you want, let me know how you find it. You can email me and let me know, what kind of things came up, if you have any further questions on that. What I'm going to try and do also is, as I said before, I gave this seminar at Bhaktivedanta Manor. Let's see, it must have been towards the end of last year. So I can also, give you some further information, some further notes on that, if you leave me your email address, just kind of outlining the whole thing in more detail, okay? But in essence, what I'll say is that creative thinking is not something just for one or two people. Creative thinking, or thinking outside the box, thinking laterally, anyone can do at any time. It's a skill, right? First point. Second point is there's a tremendous need for that kind of thinking, especially in our movement. Right? It's needed for the sake of inspiring us, for infusing us, and for helping us to realize that there are so many other possibilities. The karmis, the materialists, are doing this all the time. Right? And that's why they're spreading things, ideas, ideologies, concepts all the time. Right? We have the highest thing, but we're not spreading it. In fact, sometimes we're embarrassed about it. Right? Or it just doesn't seem to be going very well, or going anywhere. Like Prabhupada says, it's a Krishna consciousness movement. Movement means it's always moving. It's expanding, it's dynamic. And unless people see that, it's not going to make much of a difference. I was speaking to Yogeshwara Prabhu today, and he was, emphasizing this point about how what we have so far is good, but there's so much more to be done. And he's doing it. He gives seminars in various different places. He wrote a book on the life of George Harrison, and he uses that as a means to get into different corporations and to share certain principles about Krishna consciousness. And he has, so many other things that he does. He was telling me about, Try and understand what is possible. We should understand what we have, what's available, what we can do, and do it. Right? If you're not, different people have different natures. If you're not the kind of person who executes, don't worry. Right? You come up with the ideas, give it to someone else, let them execute it. Right? But still, you're benefited by being part of that process. If you want to work, if you're not the kind of person who likes to work alone, you like to work together. Get into a group. Brainstorming is one thing. Brainstorming is okay. But one of the things, but to be honest, Edward de Bono often slates brainstorming, because when you brainstorm, you usually come with the same kind of ideas anyway. Because you're not jumping out of your paradigm. You're staying within your paradigm and just coming with new ideas, which are still within the simple, the normal frame of thinking. What he's saying in lateral thinking is jump outside of your normal way of thinking and see what new ideas or conceptions can be had. Okay. So let me see if you have any comments or questions. Yes.
When you do the first technique, the
intermediate impossible.
The thing that the sentence that doesn't make sense, and how far can it go? Like,
it can go as far as you want. Any sentence. Let's say, give me a problem, a particular problem that you want to solve, like an idea, possibility. And someone help him out. One particular kind of concern, area of concern or problem or challenge. Someone suggest something.
Better time management.
Okay. So your area of concern is, I want to manage my time more effectively, right? So then someone give me a statement which is an intermediate impossible statement which does not make, intermediate impossible means it's not possible logically or it doesn't make sense.
Get rid of your watch.
Okay. It's a very good one. So, first of all, area of concern, I want to manage my time more effectively. Second is, get rid of my watch. Now, I can immediately think of some ideas, but I'm going to throw this out. How, when you bring these two things together, what kind of things, any ideas which are sparked by that, which can help you actually achieve this goal of better time management?
You forget about time when you get rid of your watch.
Okay, so how does that translate to one kind of idea that may help us with time management?
That we would be doing more things as opposed to less if we have to be at a certain place at a certain time.
Okay, so if we would do more things rather than less if we had to be at a certain place at a certain time. Yeah. Okay. Any other ideas? Yes.
Maybe it would take the pressure off if you're not really looking at a clock and you're just thinking in terms of what needs to be done. I don't know. That's just a thought.
Okay, that's not bad, but yes.
They're need better time management. They might be wasting time like watching television. So they get rid of their watch. They know what television programs are going on. It's like, okay, I've been wasting time now. This show is on. That means it's 7 o'clock. That means I need to do something else. They can tell time through other means. That's good. See, this is what I was thinking. You could tell time through other means, right? If you get rid of your watch, time could be told through other means such as your family members, right? Your boss may call you to say, oh, okay, now I need you to do this, I need you to do that. That can be a different indication which is more motivating than what your watch says. Okay? What other things? Let's just try and go with this as an example. So there's this concern, I want to manage my time more effectively. We have this intermediate impossible statement, get rid of your watch. It doesn't seem to make sense. You want to manage your time and then you're getting rid of your timepiece. What ideas are sparked from that which can help us to achieve that particular goal? Yes?
Usually when we have a watch, there's a certain sense of independence, as though we may not be able to, we can do it on our own, but without a watch, it actually might give us the thought that we need to now help, depend on others to help achieve our goals. Yeah, that's good. So then you could actually have a system of time management where other people are checking up on your time rather than you checking up yourself. So you're accountable to another person. That could be something that, so let's see how that work practically. So you're going about your day, let's say you're studying. You set up a system with your friends who are also students, so from now on, the way we're going to work and actually be more effective in our time is that you check my time limits, I check your time limits. And at the end of the day, we have to make sure that we are accountable, that we spend a certain amount of time doing different things. Would you be more motivated if other people were checking how you use your time than if you checked it yourself? So that's one practical thing. What else? What other ideas are sparked by this idea that we want to be better in our time management and at the same time we're using this statement, get rid of your watch? What other ideas? Yes?
One thought is that if you're not constrained by time, you can spend more time doing the things that you like.
Okay.
You're not suddenly thinking, oh, I have to go to the next thing.
Okay.
The things that you feel are important to you can give more time.
Okay, so you would say that a practical shift will be made in giving more time to the things which are important. Okay, but I want to focus more on practical things which your solutions. Go on.
Two ideas that I had is the wake up call, like if you have somebody else calling you to wake you up. And the other thing is if you make your schedule in sync with like a train schedule or a mode of transportation that you have to catch it to get there.
Very good. That's an excellent one as well. Do you see where I'm going with that? These are not things you come up with necessarily for your normal way of thinking, although you may sometimes. But by bringing something together which doesn't make sense with something that you're concerned about, it can spark different possibilities. Any other ideas that came from this idea of time, managing time more effectively, using the statement that get rid of your watch? Any other ideas for time management?
Maybe doing things at a different time, not at the same time. Like, it's just changing your schedule, like doing something completely different at a different time.
Okay, that's one other idea. You had your hand up?
What about taking a radical approach? Do less things.
Yeah, That's a good idea. You could even do less things. Let's see. Let's think of this idea again. So you want to manage your time more effectively. The statement is get rid of your watch. Get rid of your watch. Get rid of your timepiece. You could even change your whole paradigm from time efficiency to quality efficiency. Right? So now it's not, the focus isn't on how much time you do, you get something done, but the quality is the actual issue. Right? And you can have someone else objectively checking to see that the quality of certain things you do have to be of a certain standard. So for example, your studies, your thesis, your essays, they have to be of a certain standard. And that person you can have someone else set you time limits. That's another way you could do it. So even though you've got a deadline for an essay, you get your friend to set you a time limit, and you can also even have leverage by setting a certain commitment that if I don't do it by the time you've told me, I have to pay you some money, right? And you don't want to pay your friend any money, right? And if you're a student, you haven't got money, right? So therefore, extra impetus to get that particular thing done by that particular time.
Does that fall outside of gambling?
Is that camera still on? Who knows? No, I don't think it's sadly, don't worry about it. So, you get a sense of what I'm talking about. This is a very simple example. And you may want to start with things which you consider more simple, but factually speaking, you can use it for anything. Any area of concern. The intermediate impossible is that you come up with a statement which does not make sense, which is not logical. But you're using it. Edo de Bono says you use a statement for its movement value, right? Not for its logical value, but for its movement value. The statement is useful in how it helps you to jump outside of your normal train of thought, to jump into other ways of seeing things or other possibilities which in hindsight will make sense. Would make sense, right? That makes sense. Okay, let's try one more, since no one's rushing to leave right now. Give me another area of concern, another concern or challenge or problem. Anyone else? No one's got any problems, right? Yes.
Sharing Krishna consciousness with a group that may not receive it, or may not
Okay.
run into it, which is, I think,
So sharing Krishna consciousness with people who don't want it, right? Okay, and then someone give me, I don't have a dictionary. Okay, so, huh?
Random word.
No, see the thing is, if you come up with the random word yourself, you'll subconsciously have it linked. So it's not good to do it. You have to take it from somewhere and to make it truly random. Bhagavad Gita? Okay, so Rolly. He's gonna. She passes to Rolly.
Did you want to no, God.
So open it some random page and give us a particular word.
Unlawful.
Oops.
Sorry.
Okay, so we have two things. Thank you. I mean, immediately some ideas come to mind with me, but we have giving Krishna consciousness, giving Krishna consciousness to people who don't want to accept it, and we're juxtaposing that idea, that concern, with the word unlawful, right? So, what ideas are sparked by that in terms of giving Krishna consciousness to people who don't want it? All associations, ideas, yes.
Give it to them unlawfully?
In what way?
Beat them up? Beat them up. Beat them up.
Any ideas?
You could probably go to the prisons, the jails.
Okay.
Full unlawful people.
Okay, that's good. That's one idea. Any other ideas?
I mean, because the word is unlawful, so the idea will be very radical. Basically, what you do is you kind of kill people and say, like, if you don't follow them, we'll kill you. Like, it's by force, like.
Okay, now when I say think outside the box, what's it?
The whole thing is the Osama bin Laden style, like, someone that's what he's doing.
The camera's still on, The police, I don't want the cops to get this video.
We're
We're in trouble.
New York, so these
Yeah, exactly.
may be a little altered.
I know.
Responses you're gonna get from these.
Okay, but I mean, give me some other ideas. How do we? So the idea is we're going to give Krishna consciousness to people who don't want to accept it, and we're connecting that with the term unlawful. What ideas come from that?
Some sort of video or audio subliminal message.
Okay, that's not necessarily such a bad idea in the sense of you could find subliminal ways to present it in terms of advertising. They do that all the time. Okay, what else?
Maybe we could go back to what you were saying earlier about how people in today's world take more to the effect rather than the cause.
Mm-hmm.
So don't be so concerned about following rules and laws within this movement. Just maybe like get them to a point where they're attracted to something and then work backwards and say, well, you know, if you have like a group of people that drink or smoke or eat meat, don't like say, well, we don't eat meat, we don't smoke, we don't drink, and we don't gamble, but we want you to come and join us. Like find like something that they like to do, like maybe like they like music or movies or something, so work at them that way, and where you're not really focusing really on the laws behind the philosophy, but more on their likes and dislikes, and then you work backwards from that.
Okay, that's not bad. That's not bad. Yes.
I just, when you said unlawful, I thought of preaching in schools, because it's not legal to preach within like public schools.
Ah, okay.
Separation of
Okay, but
yeah.
we're trying to spark through this technique ideas. I'll share with you what I had. So, giving Krishna consciousness, people don't want it. Connecting with this idea of unlawful. I was thinking that devotees could find a system or a way of showing how, by implementing Krishna conscious ideas and principles, it has a reformatory effect on criminals. Right? Wow. So when you look at reform systems, you can also implement things like such as the three modes of material nature, mantra meditation, things like that. So it's part of the reformatory system. And if it's done over a period of time and there's results, you can also publish papers on it, you know, etc., etc.
Prasadam distribution.
Yeah, exactly, prasadam distribution. Yeah. Another thing is that in some prisons, they get the prisoners to do certain kinds of labour, right? You could also have them doing certain kinds of labour which are socially responsible forms of labour, whereby they're producing certain goods and services which can be utilised by the movement. Or let's say packaging prasadam, you know, for distribution, something like that. So you're getting a free labour force, right? And they're being engaged in devotional service, so they don't want to know about Krishna, right? But they're doing some seva anyway. They're getting some spiritual credits, and it's also being productive in terms of spreading the movement. Does that make sense? Yeah. Any other ideas?
I thought of an idea to say like a fine on sins.
Good.
And where I'm thinking is like, you know how in offices or homes you have this curse jar, like if you say a bad word,
yes,
they put a quarter in the jar or something like that. You could expand that to where the money is given to some, you know, quasi-Krishna conscious project or some godly project.
Yeah, definitely, especially amongst pious people. They may consider that's also an incentive for them to remain pious. If they do anything impious, they have to give something. And that money can also then go to other causes. Yes. Who else had their hand up? Any other ideas? Yes.
Well, this is not my idea, but I think I've heard in like Bangalore, I think some devotees actually sell prasadam to the prisons.
Mm-hmm.
They have business out of it.
Yeah. That's a very good idea as well. You actually, you know, the prisoners are a captive audience, right? To use a pun. so you sell prasadam. So institutions like that, who have a certain set group of people who are going to be there for a pretty long time, right? They need food. Why do they generate their own food? We supply the prasadam for them. We may even mention how that prasadam has a spiritual effect. It tends to develop more positive qualities. There could even be studies over time showing how people who take prasadam, they tend to become more calm, more peaceful. We were doing a session on public speaking. And what we do is we had devotees who provide the catering. And I remember there was a conversation of these three women, and they were talking about how they were eating the prasadam. They didn't know it was prasadam. And they're saying, oh, you know, this food's really good, you know. I think I should try vegetarianism, you know. I think I should be vegetarian. I think it's better for me to actually live this kind of lifestyle. I was just thinking how by them taking prasadam, all these kinds of ideas and concepts, they're getting purified. And they're starting to become more sattvic. They're starting to think in a more pious way. Yeah, so why not? If you're going to go for an industry, if we had one devotee-run company which just targets prisons, in terms of providing the food for prisons, it's a big audience. You can undercut the market. You can say you even specialize in that in some way, shape or form. Right? Why not do it? Right? What else?
I know something that would be really outrageous and unlawful in New York, do a 24-hour kirtan in Times Square. Yeah, that would be unlawful, right? But that might be effective.
Yeah, it may be very effective. It's true, and it also can get attention. Yeah. And who else had their hand up? Who else wanted to share something?
I forgot what I was going to say.
Oh, okay.
I lost track of my thought.
But you see where I'm going with that, right? what I'm trying to say is that there's so many possibilities which you often don't think about. But if we use these techniques, if we develop the mentality of way of meditating, how are we going to spread this movement? How are we going to make it in such a way that it's going to have a deep and lasting impact upon society? Then many, many ideas will come up. And the more that we practice, the more it will become natural. Because factually speaking, there's a big need. Gauri Priya sent an email. You actually do send an email. I also spoke to Premananda about this. They were at this yoga studio with Keshavacharya yesterday. And so you saw Russell Simmons, right? So this guy is a music mogul. He's a multi-billionaire, right? He's actually at the studio, and he's interested in spirituality. Now, he's vegetarian, right?
He was in the PETA catalog.
There you go. Now, I don't know. Has any devotee approached him, to your knowledge?
Not to my knowledge.
Right? And he's a multi-billionaire, and he's vegetarian. Do you know?
He reads the Gita.
He does? Oh, there you go.
He reads the Gita.
Then that's even more reason why we should be connecting with him.
He lives in my town, actually.
Yeah?
I googled him.
We're going to talk about that later on. You see what I'm trying to say? And Premananda was saying to me that New York is full of many celebrities. Wherever they stay, they also have a house in New York. Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, I think in one of his GoPros, they were trying to do, in the past, they were trying to do a World Holy Name Day, right? And they were trying to enlist all these famous people to emphasize on the collective platform the need to chant the holy names, whatever tradition you have. I was explaining to Premananda how, I'm not sure if it was you, I was explaining how he met Muhammad Ali. So what he did is he hired a stretch limo, he dressed up as an African king, he got 2 devotees to dress up as bodyguards, big devotees in suits and stuff. They drove the limo outside some prestigious event. They had no invitation, right? So the stretch limo rolls up. The devotee gets out the car, opens the door. Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj comes out in his African dress. He walks in. No one asked for an invitation. Nothing, right? He came into the lounge. Muhammad Ali is there in the lounge. That's how he made his connection. That's how they became connected, right? That's what I'm talking about. That's why Prabhupada, he says, one of his disciples said, Prabhupada, how do we become humble? Prabhupada said, just be bold for Krishna. That's your humility. Because it means that the reason why Prabhupada said that is it means that you don't think it's you who's doing it, right? That's what humility means. When we're limited by our ideas because we think we're doing it. So my ability is like this, therefore I can't do that because I don't have the ability to do it. That's our lack of humility. Humility means it doesn't matter what my ability is, I can be practical and try my best, and I know that the result's down to Krishna. So I will try anyway, right? And if Krishna wants, he can make the whole thing happen. That's what it means to get out of this conception that we're limited. Because we are limited. But it's not us who's actually making the result. It's Krishna who's making the result. He's not limited. So all of these things are possible. Just while I've been here, I was speaking to Twisham. He's working for Deloitte. So he's arranging for me to do like a webcast on helping them, the members develop client relationships. That'll be on the 22nd of February. And if that goes well, there'll be another webcast. Another person who works in the Bank of America, I just met him once. He's an associate, he's a friend of a devotee. So he said, next time you come, let us know in advance, we'll arrange for you to give a presentation at the Bank of America. Right? And then on top of that, there's devotees in Harrisburg congregation, many of them work for IBM. So, through another connection, we can do a presentation at IBM. Right? And that's just 3 things in less than 2 weeks. Right? All of these things are available. There's so many opportunities. Right? That's really skimming the surface. Right? It's really skimming the surface. So many other things will open up. Once you get in with one particular group, other opportunities will then also come. And even more importantly than the opportunities is the networking. And what Chaitanya Natal was telling me was about so many initiatives which are doing around social corporate responsibility, things like that. So many opportunities, right? Whereby you can present Krishna consciousness in very influential circles, leverage their networks, right? It's a full-on service. And more service will become available like that. We just have to make the endeavor. Go for it. Don't worry about your qualifications or lack of qualifications. Be practical, try your best, make the endeavor, and see how Krishna will open doors for you. Actually, Bhakti Tirthamaj, the last darshan I had with my spiritual master, he said to me, he said, if we use what we have to the best of our ability, he said, Krishna himself can open doors for you. That's what he told me. Right? He said, if we utilize what we have to the best of our ability, he said, Krishna himself can open doors for you. And he's saying that from his realization. He was invited, and he actually attended, he went to a secret mountain base in South Africa, and there were like military officials, ministers, heads of state, and he was doing leadership training, right? Now he's written a book on leadership, right? But it's not that he's like, went to university and studied leadership, nothing like that. But somehow or other, through context, this opportunity was made available. And these things happen all the time. So many opportunities are available, so many things we can do in so many different arenas. But we have to be meditating with that possibility in mind. And also, it's got to be done with that real desire to be compassionate. We want to spread the movement because actually we want to please Krishna, please Srila Prabhupada, and help people. Right? And you can even, if you want, Krishna can even give you realizations to live life a different way. Right? You may think, I don't have time to do as much preaching as I wanted to. But then you start thinking, how will I be able to do things in such a way that I'll be able to get more preaching done? Krishna can give you ideas. Right? You can get this, you can live life this way, do this, this and this, preaching that way. Right now there's European social funds, and I'm sure so many other kinds of funding whereby people will literally pay you to give them Krishna consciousness. Right? I'm serious. I have the god brother in England. He would go to the Croatian summer camp. I think he went up for 2 or 3 years running. What they did is they got him European social funding paid for him to go to Croatian summer camp. Right? On Nanda Shino. Our good brother. He's based in Washington DC. If you may come across him at some point or other, you can ask him. He got funding from the European Social Fund to go to Croatia. Preaching to youth and things like that, there's social funding where you can get, if you know how to make the application. We were exploring this in Canada, in Toronto. If you know how to make the application, the government will pay. Right? We don't think like that. When we think about it, we think, I've got to raise some money. Right? We've got to kind of get donations. That's our limited paradigm. That's one possible way of doing it. There are other ways of doing it. Tapping into government funding. There's another thing I'll tell you about. My spiritual master, one of the things that he said is he wanted to preach more to the. He said there are many pious communities in America, right? You have a group of people whereby when they were young they were hippies, and then they left the hippie culture. They became very successful executives, right? And then after being successful executives, they retired. So when they retired, they still had their inclinations for spirituality from their hippie days. And at the same time, they were extremely successful business executives. So he wanted to start to tap into those people because they have that spiritual inclination and they're materially successful. His strategy was to work with those people in order to get more things done in terms of spreading the movement. So if you look online and you actually do a search, you can find out more information about that particular demographic. And then find ways in order to reach those particular people and share Krishna consciousness with those particular people. Even if they don't become devotees, they'll be favorable and they'll help you spread the movement. They'll give you contacts, connections, ideas. If you want to start, another thing we're doing in England, there's a lot of, originally we wanted to start our own bank, right? But because of the regulations and so on involved, they decided to kind of put that idea aside. Although in Chowpatty, in India, they have their own bank. Right? Someone was telling me they have their own bank, right? Someone was saying that in the Jewish community, the money circulates at least 5 times before it ever leaves that community. At least 5 times before it leaves that community. Do you understand what I'm talking about? Right? So anyway, even though we couldn't do the bank idea, some devotees were looking at hedge funds. Because the idea is that as a means to secure the funding of our projects, you have hedge funds. So the idea is that you don't have to wait for donations, because if you wait for donations, then you can't forward plan. But if there's a hedge fund, you have a guaranteed income which you can use to plan into the future and decide on a strategy and how you can expand different things. Again, thinking outside of the box. Or this is even so much thinking outside the box. It's looking at things which have been done in business and seeing how these things can be implemented from spiritual movement, spiritual life. Every time you try and do these things and you try and share these things and learn these things and implement these things, you get tremendous benefits from Lord Chaitanya. He's very pleased when he sees people striving to spread the movement. Even if the ideas don't ultimately work, Your job, our job, is to make the endeavor. Krishna's decision is as to whether it's going to be successful or not successful. Does that make sense? Right? So we should be meditating like that. How can I spread this movement? What ideas can I have which will really make a difference to this movement? And if we think like that, you'll see amazing things will come. Materially and spiritually, if you're a Vaishya, right? Because Vaishyas are running the world, and you have that kind of Shakti to make money. I was speaking to Garanga Prabhu, we were at Bhaktivedanta Man, and he told me, he said, the reason why the man is successful is because they're Vaishyas, right? He says, Vaishyas know how to make the money and to keep the money there, right? That's what he told me. So even if you're not a Vaishya, ideas anyone can come up with. It may not be your particular field in order to deal with the money or the finance side, but then the educational side is another idea. Or you're dealing with one particular area, but you have ideas which spill over into many other areas. There are many artists or like musicians, they have a certain kind of style of singing or a certain kind of musical style that they're known for, but they write for other kinds of music. You get my point? Right? So maybe an R&B style, but they even write songs which are like given to some country or Western singers. Right? So you may have your particular service, but you may also have ideas which can be implemented by other people in other areas of spiritual life to still spread the movement, because it's all part of the same team. We have to make the endeavor to try and do these things. Right? Always think about how we can spread this movement. Think about how you can strengthen your own spiritual life and find ways, be active and find ways to give it to others, because God helps those who help themselves. Many of your ideas won't come until you start to actually move out and do things. But Krishna will see, he's trying. So because he's trying, I'm going to give him some ideas which will make him even more successful. Right? Because he's trying, or she's trying. Right? God helps those who help themselves. Yes, you were going to say something.
Yeah, just a practical point. Just when we try to pursue things, we know challenges are going to come up. We're going through challenges, we're experiencing them. I guess what type of gauges are we using to know whether to let go of that since it's not being successful, move on, or keep persisting because we know we're supposed to face challenges?
Okay, sure. So there's Guru Sadhu Shastra. One thing that one Prabhupada disciple said, he said, how do you know what Krishna wants? He said, no problem. Just do the very best in whatever service you're doing, and Krishna will organically make the arrangement. Right? I have these lectures, 5 lectures by Satchidananda Swami, How to Contact the Super Soul. One of the things he says in that lecture is that if you're not sure if Krishna wants you to do something, he said if you let's say you hear something from devotees, right? And you're not sure whether it's coming from Krishna or not. He said if you're not sure, don't act on it. He said if it's coming from Krishna, you'll get the message again and again and again. It'll come from different angles, different sources. That's one aspect. That's sadhu. Guru is also there, right? So you know that because you're getting full marks for making the endeavor, when you connect with your spiritual authorities or your spiritual master and he says, no, just stay there and carry on working on this or carry on working on that, then you just do it. You get full benefit because you're doing what he told you. He's representing Krishna, so when he says that and you do it, you get full benefit. There's no loss. And on top of that, you have the Shastra. There's so many examples. As you practice, everything becomes alive. You see it. I remember once, it was about a month ago, because we have this kind of competitive mentality. So I was thinking about one particular devotee, and he was doing something. I was thinking, I want to kind of do something. I want to do something even bigger. And I was reading Srimad Bhagavatam. I think it's in 5th canto. There's a purple. Prabhupada, it's almost like the words jumped out at me. He said, the Vaishnava does not try to supersede another Vaishnava. Right? Straight. So the Vaishnava does not try to supersede another Vaishnava. Right? You'll see more and more how it'll jump out at you. You get the same message again and again. If you pray, also a way to help that is prayer. We should be in a prayerful mood. But in one sense, the most important thing is you're doing it with devotion. The fact that you're doing it with devotion is what brings about Krishna's intervention and Krishna's communication to you. Right? Another point that you should understand is that if you're doing what Krishna wants, you'll feel a deep sense of lasting internal satisfaction. Even if there's difficulties and challenges externally, you will still feel very infused. Right? That's how you know the difference between when you've made an offense and when you're just going through a challenge which you're working through karmically. Sometimes devotees are going through great struggles in their spiritual life. But it's just because they had some karma to work through, because Krishna sees you're serious. He gives you the karma quickly, you work through it quickly and you can progress. In that kind of situation, even though you're having external challenges, because you're doing the right thing, you'll feel internally exhilarated, you'll feel infused. The other example is when you're having very great difficulties and you're losing your taste for spiritual life, and that can be because offenses are made. Therefore, Krishna takes away the taste, therefore you're struggling because there's no flavor in your spiritual life at that time. That's how you can tell the difference between the two. So Guru, Sadhu, Shastra. We don't do anything independently, right? Krishna consciousness is not a one-man show. You can't, because it's so subtle, there'll be certain levels or certain degrees of spiritual life whereby you can't do it on your own. And if you don't have people who you're checking in with, authorities, who can also look at you and say, hey, be careful, you're going a bit too much in this direction or a bit too much in that direction. We all need guidance because Maya is so strong that by ourselves there's no question of fighting against Maya. There is no, devotees don't fight against Maya. Forget it. It's not even the beginning. You can't, there's no idea about that. Maya has a boss. We take shelter of Maya's boss and therefore we can go through. That's how it works. So Guru, we're checking with spirit. Guru means not just your spiritual master, but your spiritual authorities. In any area, you should have spiritual authorities. People don't like authority because authority means God. And we're envious of God, so anyone else who's representing authority we have difficulty with. But when you have authorities, your success is guaranteed, is multiplied. Because you're accountable and therefore you're also protected. It gives you a certain sense of security. Okay? Gauranga Prabhu actually, I'll share this other point, it's a bit personal, but I was feeling something after my spiritual master left and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. I was at the manor and I was speaking to Gauranga Prabhu and he shared with me a realization. He said, I can tell that when your spiritual master left his body, it affected your confidence. He said, because while your spiritual master was on the planet, you knew that whatever happened, there was that one person who always had your back in all circumstances. He said, so when he went, then it had some effect on your confidence. It's like that. You need to have shelter. Someone that's above you, that you're accountable to, who's also giving some guidance and giving some assistance, or even just giving blessings. A lot of the success of our spiritual activities and endeavors is based upon the blessings that we get from authorities. On the battlefield of Kurukshetra, before the battle begins, Arjuna and Yudhishthira, they come before Bhishmadev and Dronacharya and they ask for permission to fight. They say, alright, we know that you're superior warriors than us, we want permission, but we know we can't defeat you normally, but we want your blessings and permission to fight against you. And they get their blessings. Bhishmadev tells them, he said, had you not asked for our permission to fight against us, you would have lost this battle. Okay? That's how powerful the blessings of authority is. When someone is your teacher, to the degree that you're actually properly following them or respectful, you get a special blessing. When I had darshan with Shivram Maharaj, before I came to America, he told me that there's a natural transmission that happens between the guru and the disciple. It's not just that you see the guru, but any teacher, as long as you're properly in alignment, there's a natural transmission of blessings. Because Krishna is in your heart, the guru or the authority represents him, so when you treat that person properly, internally and externally, you get a special blessing. Again, in the Mahabharata, it's Ekalavya, right? So he wasn't qualified to be a Kshatriya. So Dronacharya didn't want to teach him. He creates an effigy, right, of Dronacharya, and he worships him so well that he becomes such a powerful Kshatriya. Right? But Dronacharya is very intelligent. He knows that this person's power has come because he's properly worshipped me in that sense. So when Dronacharya asks him when Dronacharya gives him an instruction, he knows that if this person doesn't follow what I've told him, because I'm his guru, if he disobeys my instruction, he'll lose his potency. So he gives him an instruction. He says you have to cut off your thumb, right? So then Ekalavya is stuck. He knows if I disobey my guru, my potency will go, because he's the one because I've become powerful, not because Dronacharya taught me one-to-one. I worshipped him. I worshipped my authority. I had proper respect for my guru. That's what gave me that power, that potency. So when I disobey him or don't follow him properly, I lose it. Dronacharya knew this because he wanted to lose his ability. But if I follow his instruction and cut off my thumb, I can't be an archer, right? It will affect my fighting ability. So either way, I've lost, right? So I think he cuts off his thumb, right?
Yeah.
You see how it works? That's the secret behind it. It's not an external thing. It's not that you have an authority. Yeah, he has an authority, but I don't have to listen to him, or I can, just ignore him, or like criticize them, you lose your potency that way. But if you're properly respectful, there's a special spiritual blessing because any authority represents a principle of guru. It's not just who they are, it's the position that they actually are holding. It's what they represent. That's where you get your power. That's where we get our power from. Right? Does that answer your question? Yeah. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay, I think we better stop because I've got a habit of going over time. So anyway, thank you very much. I hope you shared something that you can implement, experiment with, that can be of use to you, and do it. The world belongs to Krishna, and He's ready and willing to give it to the devotees. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, only the devotees should have wealth because only they know what to do with it. Right? Like that. So find ways to see how to spread this movement. Think about it, meditate on it. It's a powerful meditation. That meditation is non-different from meditating on the pastimes of the Lord. It's non-different. Same benefit, actually the difference is it's easier. Right? It gives also the qualification by which one can come to this platform where you are able to constantly meditate on the pastimes of Radha and Krishna. That's actually how the two are connected. Okay. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Stop.
No, on the camera. No.